Well, hey there, Diet Disruptors. Carrie here. And once again, I have a guest coach that is part of our coaching series. Meet the Coaches is what we're calling it right now. And we have, oh my gosh, a coach that has such a story. I mean, all of our coaches have such a story, but I have been dying for Sarah to tell her story. So, Sarah Mahoney, hello, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thrilled
This
to
is
be here.
this is your first time on our podcast.
Yes, it is.
I'm
It
so
definitely is.
So I'll just give a little bit of information and then I want you to fill in the gaps because Sarah came to us as a potential client. Now, we actually get a lot of health coaches that book calls with us to, have a conversation with a coach and really get to learn a little bit more about what we do. It's hard to bring a health coach on board. You have to have a
Mhm.
lot of humility, a lot of vulnerability to say, I have been supporting clients and I'm not sure that what I'm doing is exactly what I want to be doing. And I'm not sure it's really meeting my needs. And that was Sarah. See, Sarah came to us as a client, but also as a health coach. So, Sarah, talk a little bit about your story, what you were, how you were supporting clients, and then what made you decide to reach out to us. And then the caveat is that she actually signed on to work with us, where many of them just want to learn a little bit more information and then move on. But you actually decided I'm going to be a client. So this is an
Oh, yeah.
amazing story. So let's talk
Yeah.
about
Well, I signed on because I couldn't walk away. That was the number one thing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But prior to even making that, having that phone call, I was health coaching other people for over 3 years and was very successful in that. And, by year three, I just got to a point where I was that person who was opening up my refrigerator and I'm looking in there and I'm going, well, I don't know what to eat anymore. I don't know what is going to fuel me. I don't know what is going to taste good. I just kind of got to that weird stage that some of us get to where we don't enjoy food anymore because all that noise that's out there. I mean, there's so much noise in diet culture where this is good and this is bad. And it just starts to get muddled. Even when you have all the knowledge in the world, you start to believe all of these things that go on. And so I had stepped away from coaching when I had made that call, that initial contact with you guys, and just said, you know what, I need to figure out what I need to do, and I can't, coach other people when this isn't working for me anymore. It wasn't something I felt was sustainable. I felt like I'm already chained to this thing way too much, and when you have to track your food, you're chained to it even more, and that wasn't something I wanted for my life. And
and
so,
that's what you were doing, right? Like when you were coaching, people were tracking their food.
yep,
And there
they
was
were
also
tracking.
a really big difference in philosophies. So can you share the philosophy of what you were coaching and then the philosophy of disruptive nutrition?
So the philosophy,
A cavern
yeah.
of difference.
Yes, I mean, big time. I had been intermittent fasting, which worked until it stopped working, kind of was what Carrie always says. So does it really work? Not really.
Exactly.
And then I was also macro tracking. So what I like to call macro Tetris, where you're playing the role of, okay, if I eat this or I eat that, and you have to move it around and make sure it works. And so it was this constant manipulation of what am I going to eat to make sure I meet my macros. And that was my day. I mean, I'd only eat about 8 hours a day and I'd have a couple, I work out and I did all the things right, but I just got to that point where it stopped being something I wanted to do. So I just threw it all out. It was kind of like, I don't know what to do anymore because I don't want to do that.
And
And
if
just,
you got to that point, Sarah, with training and coaching others, it's no wonder that the women that we work with, or the women that are in our free Facebook group, or the women that just come through our feed, they're confused because you literally had all the training and you got to the point where like, this isn't sitting well with my soul.
right. That,
And
and not only do I have the training, but I'm a highly motivated person. I mean, you've
yeah,
known me for a little while now.
yeah.
I tend to dot all the I's, cross all the T's. I'm that overachieving person. So for me to fall off is significantly different than even some other people who are out there. So now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did I disserve people? And then I feel guilty with that. But no, my goal was still truly altruistic to help others because I had felt good initially doing that. And then I just stopped feeling good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I think that's really important to talk about in terms of your goals, because I always talk about my coaches that come to work with us, that they have a heart of a teacher. And Sarah and I was, and Sarah still is a teacher, special educators. It's so funny because when Sarah and I connected, we realized we knew the same people, and we have a very similar background. And that heart of a teacher is what drives you. But also, girl, I know the special ed teacher thing is a lot of crossing T's and dotting I's. So it's not surprising that you are all in and doing whatever, food plan that you're doing as well.
Exactly. I am that person that I don't just jump all in without doing the research.
Mhm.
And even before I had decided to even have that phone call where I could meet a coach to figure out really what is this, I'm a master at Googling. We all are when we're educators, especially when you're special educators. So I had found all the things and I just kept thinking, wow, this just sounds really way too good to be true. It can't be real. So I wanted to be that person to get on this phone call and debunk the fact that this truly is something sustainable.
I
That
didn't know that.
oh yeah. Oh yes,
I love it.
absolutely. So it was that piece where it was like, it really sounds too good to be true. When someone sat there and says, you'll know exactly what to eat, when to eat it, what type of portions, and you're going to feel amazing and you don't have to weigh, measure, or track, I was like, there's no way.
Mhm.
There's
In
no
any
way.
situation, wherever you are in
Yes.
your life, no matter what life throws at you.
And that was where I was kind of like, okay, now I really have to do this because there's no way that's really true. And
Mhm.
I'll be able to come back and say, nope, it's not true. And thank goodness it was true because it changed my life. I don't have to track anymore. That was huge. That was like the biggest weight off of my shoulders. And I'm like, oh, there really is this mythical creature of knowing what to eat and not having to think about food all day long.
But as a special ed teacher, you can appreciate how we teach that, right? Because that's
Exactly.
the thing. It's like, make sure you teach so that they learn.
Yep.
Do you know how many times as an educational consultant, I was in schools all around the country and teachers were teaching, but I'm like, well, are kids learning? And
Yeah.
they were like, most of them were like, no, really. But
Uh-huh.
that's what's so important, right? Is that you learn. And so, what you got to learn and what you got to implement, just talk a little bit about that and where that transformation came from within the first few weeks.
Well, first it was, you'll find this funny too. Even when I initially had seen the program and kind of got a back end glance at it when I was talking to one of the senior coaches, I flat out said this had to be built by a special ed teacher. I mean,
Oh,
it
I
was
didn't
one of
know
the first,
that
oh
either.
yeah, this is one of the first things I said because there was so many layers to it that wasn't just about food. And that was where I realized, okay, there is something truly drastically different because we're not just talking about food. We're
Mhm.
talking about our relationship with food. We're talking about even just how we live our lives every single day so we can then manage what we need to manage for ourselves. So then we can do the things we're meant to do. And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of other things, actually everything out there is lacking. We're not truly digging into that person and what they are, what their goals are, who they want to be versus who they are in that moment. So we can meet them where they are and then start building into that person, which is really what a special ed teacher does.
Yeah.
I mean, we start setting goals and then we start, okay, how are we going to get to those goals? And that's exactly what's been built. So it's magical that it's kind of like going back to school, but in a way where it's something that you want to learn. That's
And you're learning stuff that's really gonna make a difference.
right.
But when you talk about how nothing else out there kind of exists, Sarah, I tell your story all the time. Tell everybody how many diets you think you've tried over the years. And tell us how old you are too.
So I'm 42.
Okay.
So
She looks like
not
she's
very old.
32.
Well, thank you. I will take that any day of the week. But when I sat down, and I sat down and wrote this down when I was 39 years old. So this was, a couple years ago. I have done over that I could write down and remember, which I know I didn't remember all of them, over 50. I wrote them out, over
Oh.
50 diets in my lifetime.
I have chills. And
Yeah.
that was only when you were 39 years
Hmm.
old.
Yep.
Now, if you had kept going the way you were going. Now, I love that you got into figuring things out and made some radical shifts, although that it was really another diet what you were
Yeah.
teaching as
Mhm.
your original health coaching stint. But at the end of the day, if you had kept going where you were going, just where do you feel like you would have been, not just physically, but also emotionally, right? Like both places.
Well, physically, I can tell you where I was. That's easy for me to answer. I would be tired. I would have that severe brain fog. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
sleeping well. And even random things like from the time I was in my 20s, I was getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, which a lot of people think that's normal. And here I thought that was normal. That's not normal. It's not. Now I know that,
Yeah.
because even something as simple as changing the food, not even the food that I'm eating, but just the way that I'm eating it and the way I'm combining it, I don't have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Is that
Huge,
crazy?
right? It's crazy. You would never think that it would affect your bladder that much, but it does. So that I can tell you immediately. And also, I tend to be the lucky person who I'm in premature menopause. I've had a total hysterectomy. So I've also dealt with the hormones and everything else. And I was even on hormone replacement therapy, having hot flashes and going through all of those other things, having, the dry skin, the things that you wouldn't want to have, especially at 42 years old. Right.
Yeah.
And so now I don't have any of those. It's like I'm aging in reverse. I feel like every time I look in the mirror, it's like, oh wow, I look better today than I did yesterday. Which who gets to say that, right?
No.
So that would be where I would be physically, but emotionally, I know that I would just not be as confident in myself. And I've always been a very confident person, but the difference is I'm not just confident in myself now, I'm confident in what I'm doing. I can't tell you how many times I've done something and I'm in the middle of it and I might be having success, but I was miserable, right? You're absolutely miserable. So of course I'm going to look for that next best thing. Well, I don't have to look for the next best thing because this isn't difficult. It's just the way that I live my life. I mean,
Love that.
it's not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it's just the way that I live, but it doesn't feel like effort or work. It's just the way my life is now.
I mean, Sarah, you're so smart. You're so tenderhearted. You're so driven. You are just everything in a woman. And yet you spent so much of your life and time
Mhm.
tracking, counting, obsessing, all of that kind of stuff. And it's just amazing how someone with so much talent and so much knowledge and so much potential gets sucked into a world that, I mean, we only have so many hours in a day. And so
Yep.
when we think about how much time you have spent cognitively and actually
Mhm.
feeling in the diet world, it's just mind-boggling. And at 42 years old now, you have a whole new capacity for doing things, which is why now like you're back into health coaching. You're
Yes.
you're you're doing more of these things. I always say that, I mean, goodness, like it's my theory about why there's always just been men in the White House. Because we have spent way too much time focusing on the things that we don't need to focus on.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited about all of this for you and all that you've been doing. So as you work with clients and you kind of dig in and you're a special ed teacher and you've been a health coach for many years, kind of what do you see as some of the biggest needs out there for women and what they're really looking for that you get to support them on? Kind of
So
some of
the
the things that you love about all of this.
Well, what I love about this, and this is where, again, this is so different than anything out there, is we know as special ed teachers, when we make something accessible, then people are more likely to execute.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of things out there, whether it's, and number one, we're not deprivation either, which is the other piece, which is so, it's just a nice change. But we have all the resources available. So you don't have to be that person where, okay, well, I want something to eat. So now I'm going to have to look for a recipe and figure this out. And then I'm going to have to move. Everything's in one space and everything is organized in a way where even if somebody is not technologically savvy, they can very easily grab what they need. They also have a coach that all they have to do is text and ask a question. But what's even better is we don't just give them the answers. We help them learn, how do you ask a question? How do you find out that answer? So not only they don't feel like they have to have us all the time, but they feel like they can do this independently the rest of their life. And so we're teaching them along the way. We're giving the resources, but also guiding them to also, hey, let's start looking and digging deeper for you as well, because what works for you might be a little bit different than what works for me or what works for Elizabeth over here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. And it's what us educators term the gradual release of responsibility
Mhm.
from me as the expert, from you as the expert to our client as the expert. And I think that that's so incredible. I was just talking about this the other day that by the time our clients leave, even after like 1 month of working with us, and nobody ever leaves, let's be honest, like
Right.
we need everybody to stay. We never let people leave. It's like, remember
Which
John
for good
Grisham?
reasons.
Remember or I don't know, you may be younger than me on this one, but John Grisham, The Firm, like
Uh,
you go in and you can never leave the firm. It's sort of like
right.
that. Wrap your arms around you, right? But I mean, I think that the fact that after even a month, like people feel like they can teach this to others.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I love that us as educators are just really focused on educating others.
Hmm.
That's really really the key to this. So I want you to start thinking about some of your tips. Okay. So
Okay.
as you talk to people, just randomly, even people that you're not coaching, and they're like, what is it that you do? Or what are some tips? If somebody just said that to you, and especially as our diet disruptors, those are in a free Facebook group or listening to our podcast, and they're like, okay, I need to start doing a few things differently. What
Mhm.
are you, some of those, like, to do a few things differently? This is what I would suggest.
And they're all very, very random. So most people have a pantry. Organize your pantry, have your proteins in one section, have your carbs in another section. If you do have portable fats, which is not something most usually have on hand unless it's refrigerated, put it in a separate section. So if you have to grab and go, you grab and go. It's not
Love it.
difficult. You don't have to think about it. The other
And that's
big thing
even
I,
great for your kids too. Think about
yes,
that, right? If you say to
absolutely.
your kids, here are your protein options here in
Hmm.
the fridge or in the pantry, grab one of each. I mean,
Yep.
that's such a teacher thing to do,
Yep.
right?
The kids can pack their own lunch, honestly. If you start
Yes.
creating those bins, you don't have to, pack lunches anymore. That was the number one thing I hated.
Oh, me
My
too.
daughter was in school. She's 23 years old, and thank goodness my husband took very much pride in making her lunches. I mean, she would have chili and everything else for lunch. I
Oh my
hated
gosh.
packing lunch.
I mean, I literally am in this battle all the time around. Now my kids are older, so they make their own lunches, but I always have this battle of like, how bad is a school lunch? Like, do I just make them have the
Yeah.
school lunch? And then you look at the school lunch and you're like, oh dear
Yep.
God, no, I
Well,
can't.
if I didn't want to eat it, I wasn't going to ask her to eat it. So it was one of
Exactly.
those things where, okay, I'll make the lunch real quick.
Yeah.
Like I just hated it. And I
But
hate
now they
packing
can
my
make
own
their
lunch.
own.
Right. But I hate packing my own lunch. That's the other thing. I just am not one who likes to pack a lunch. So when we make a meal at night, okay, now that I've had my meal, my leftovers get packed into individual serving sizes. I throw some of them. Sometimes I'll just put in the refrigerator because I might be one or two. And
Yeah.
then if I have more than two, it goes in the freezer. So that way, if there's especially a day where I'm crazy busy or my husband's a firefighter, he's gone for 24 hours. I might not want to cook a giant meal just for myself. I can grab it out of the freezer and I have no excuse to not be eating well. I don't
I
have to
love
go out and
that.
waste money or waste, even just eating something that maybe isn't as good for me. Not that it's bad. It's just not, I have a lot of food sensitivities and things that don't work well for me. So I have something on hand all the time.
Yeah. Food serves our body and food serves our soul, and we need both, right? But all
Exactly.
right. So let's talk a little bit about, you are a busy teacher. I always say we work with there hasn't ever been a career that we haven't been able to work with
Right.
as long as people want to. There's
Hmm.
always excuses that people can make and then they don't
Hmm.
really want it. But you are a busy teacher all day long and then you
Hmm.
coach at night. So what does a typical day look like for Coach Sarah when you wake up, and like how do you get through your busy day eating
Okay.
PFC, fueling your body all day?
And I'm a creature of habit, and I have been that
Yeah.
way for a long time. And I've made some adjustments through living this lifestyle that's been positive adjustments, so I can make sure I am able to accomplish what I want to during the day. But I wake up in the morning, I hop in the shower, I get ready for work. And then right after that, I'm making myself my PFC shake. A shake is super easy for me. I'm not one who likes to eat in the morning in general. And because I wake up so early, I don't work out in the morning, but I also intentionally plan my day because I know I tend to be more tired in the afternoon. So it's better for me to work out in the afternoon for me personally. So I'll do that. I'll get on my way to work because I'll have grabbed my lunch because I won't have packed it. I just grab it out of the refrigerator and go.
Love it.
And I'm teaching all day long. And so when I have my first meal, it's between 9:30 and 10 a.m. There are students in my room all the time. I work one-on-one with students, and there's not bells in the building where I work. We're very much schedule wise like a college. So the kids come to see me on their breaks. Well, I could be sitting next to a student, whether it's taking a math test with them, or maybe I'm doing specially designed instruction of something else. And I might be eating a meal while I'm sitting right next to a student because that's just what works for me. And
And
then I
think
do
about what you're
it.
modeling for your
Mhm.
kids too, you
Oh,
know?
and they always notice my food, and they're so when they come in my room, I'm like, okay, what's the protein in there? What's your carb? What's your fat? And they just
Oh,
like, okay. I mean,
I
they
love that.
know, and they think
So
it's
by
funny.
9:30, you will have had 2 meals by
Yep,
then, because you eat
yep.
within an hour of waking up, you have a PFC
Mhm.
meal, then you do like a grab and go. Is that what you do typically when you're working with kids?
It
Or
really depends on the day because I have a microwave nearby. I can step out for about 30 seconds, microwave. I can bring it right back in. So it's pretty flexible with what I do as far as that piece goes. So
yeah.
it just depends on what I pack. It might be a couple hard-boiled eggs and something else. It might be something that was leftovers. I don't mind eating a dinner from the night before during the morning the next day. I don't believe in, certain meals are only made for breakfast or dinner or things like that because I don't have time for that.
Yep.
So it just truly depends on what that is. And Then by 1:30, the students are gone, and I'll have a kind of a student-free lunch during my planning time, which is totally fine. And I'll eat that meal, and then I'm out the door by almost 2:30, 3 o'clock, and come home, get a workout in before I need to eat the next meal, kind of a thing. So it all kind of works out really, really well with just the way my schedule operates, where I
I
can
love
hit those
that. And you
hours.
adjusted to make that work for you.
And then I always have something in my car. I know I have a 30-minute commute. I never know if I'm going to get stuck. So I
Mhm.
have non-perishable things that are in my car that if I, for some reason, need to eat something, I'm going
Yep.
to. I don't want to feel terrible. I don't want to play the catch-up game of my blood sugar not being stable. So there's always something either in my purse and or in my car. Typically it's in
Love
both
it.
places because I could be out somewhere. And it's just something simple, nothing crazy, but I can grab it. It's not even heavy. I make sure it's not heavy so my purse isn't heavy and I have it ready to go.
What's
So
your favorite like emergency go-to grab that you'd have in your purse? Or your
um,
preferred, I should say.
my preferred is a Chomps beef stick. I
Mhm.
love the chomps. They're clean, they're quick, they taste good. Very, very simple.
And
And
what do
so
you
I
do for a carb typically
at
with that?
carb, there are these little fruit bars. I think they're called Just Fruit that I
Yeah.
will every once and they're delicious. And obviously I like fresh fruit better than dried fruit, but in a pinch, those are amazing. And they're stable food. So it could be as hot as heck and they're still not going to be ruined or anything else sitting in my car.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
it.
That's why those are very, very easy to grab. They don't melt. They're just easy grab and go.
I'm just so grateful that you found us. I'm so grateful that, you are continuing to do what you wanted to do by health coaching, but feeling so much more confident about what you're able
Yes.
to do for women and that you yourself are back on track.
Yes.
Just in your own history of health, you needed this.
Mhm.
And I mean, just all of the other stuff. It's like, this is what I always say, when you put on your own oxygen mask, you're going to be able to put others on. And you
Right.
went into this thinking you were just doing this really, well, A, to prove us wrong, but B, to put on your
Yeah.
own oxygen mask.
Right.
But it's now turned into you being able to help so many other people. And so,
Yes.
so grateful for that.
You and me both. That's part I'm that person that when I find something that works, I feel like it's part of my role to share it with other people because if we keep it to ourselves, then we're selfish. And what we should be doing is sharing with everybody else because everybody can live this way. It's not something that's difficult. Once you understand what a protein, fat, and carb are, you're ready to go. It's
Yeah.
that simple. It's
Yeah.
not rocket science. Anybody can live this way. A 2-year-old can live this way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I mean,
The
that's
the
what's
key
wonderful.
though is where our thoughts and our beliefs dictate our
Yep,
actions so you can stick with something for the rest of your life, our systems, our
exactly.
lifestyle. I mean, you have integrated yourself into a lifestyle
Yes,
now. And
yes,
that's where it really needs to evolve to. And so you're
absolutely.
so inspirational. No more dieting for you.
Nope, just the
And you're so
lifestyle.
young. Like you got like 70 more years.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I'm super envious of Coach Jess, and I can't wait till you have her on this because she found this in her 30s, and I'm like, gosh, could you imagine the change in my life if I would have found this in my 30s? But
I
amazing.
know.
I had a great set of 30s, but every 10 years, I mean, it's getting better every year is the way I see it.
Well,
So
for sure. I mean, I was 37 and now I'm 47, closer to 48
mhm,
and more energy, more just and more wisdom. So you
yep.
know what? We learn it and we get it when we're ready and when we need it. And
Well,
that's the way
that
that
and we can appreciate it now too.
Mhm.
I feel like once you've been through different things and you have a new appreciation for something that truly is, satisfaction of
Yeah,
really how you are living your life because you know how bad it can be
I
and now
know.
you know how good it is.
I
So,
know. I know. And that's sort of like the thing with my kids. It's like I've taught them this, but have they they really know how bad it could be for
one
them?
day they'll really figure it out. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's what she's talking about."
they only listen to their mom for so long. They're gonna deviate and then come back. So
Yep, I get it. It happens.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Please, you guys, when just I think when sometimes when you watch somebody, or listen to somebody, you don't realize how hard it is to get in front of people and to be vulnerable and share your heart. And so, thank you for that. Comment as you're listening. Just say thank you to Sarah. And if you are interested in just getting on a call, you can be skeptical.
Yeah.
And ask all the questions. You
Mhm.
may actually talk to Sarah. She's one of our
Yep.
coaches that loves to chat with people about this lifestyle and what it can do for them. So do that. Jump on that. We'll put a link in there for you. All right, Sarah, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. All
All right.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.